Try not to move around too much. I don't really do so. So just before I begin, I also would like to, say my thanks. Is that really echoey? No? It's fine, yeah? So I would just like to say my thank you as well. It's been great to be a part of this. Thank you for letting me, speak, meeting people, and the food at lunchtime was amazing. So thank you. I only had one samosa. What's wrong with me? I should have had more. So, okay. So I'm going to be talking to you about something that's very, very close to me, very dear to me. I've played tennis for a long time. I'm not a pro, no, more of an amateur, but I enjoyed it so much that I did a coaching qualification. And I've done some coaching as well. And it always struck me that as a player, you could have the skills, you could play quite well, but then it's the mental side that took over. Made you choke, made you, hit the ball in the net, hit it out, your strokes weren't going well, and things like that. So I was always interested in the mental side of tennis. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I have a PhD in sociology, but when I was at another university working there, I became interested in positive psychology. And so I decided to do a master's in applied positive psychology. And that's what gave me the ingredients, if you like, to pursue my interest in the mental side of tennis. So for those of you that are unaware, I'll give you a little bit of background about positive psychology. Anybody aware of positive psychology? Maybe a couple people? Okay, so those of you that are aware, please bear with me, for those that aren't. So it's a relatively new field. Emerged at the end of the 20th century, with the originators Martin Seligman and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I said that right, quite a mouthful. And I've had plenty of practice. Martin Seligman, who was president of the American Psychological Association at the time, said that, well, why is our focus so much on what's wrong with us? Everything we try to look for therapy, try to look for ways to make us feel better, but why don't we look at the positive side of us? Why don't we focus on that? And so positive psychology then can be defined as a scientific study of positive experiences and positive individual traits. So to understand what makes us happy, which is very subjective, granted that, but we can make a study of it to identify that. So it can become the study of the conditions and processes that contribute to the flourishing or optimal functioning of people, groups, and institutions. Okay, so there's lots of definitions, people talking about what is positive psychology, but the key words there are really happiness, positivity, the conditions, processes, flourishing, optimal functioning. Some of those key things that you'll always come across in the literature. So fast forward closer to the present day, so critique of the first wave of positive psychology, if you like to say, that it's perhaps focusing too much on what is positive. But in real life, we also have negative emotions and experiences. And so what second wave positive psychologists term the dark side of positive psychology. So really what we need to do is be aware, be mindful of both our positive and negative thoughts. Okay, so that's very much a very brief background to positive psychology. Okay, so what I did in my master's dissertation, is I wanted to explore, so taking some positive psychology concepts such as character strengths, mindfulness, which we all know in this room, is not anything new. But I wanted to look at the relationship between those two. So look at the relationship between character strengths and mindfulness during tennis coaching sessions. In the idea to improve tennis performance and to create what Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. Basically, when we reach a state of time might stand still, it might go so fast, we're so immersed in what we're doing that we're doing it if time, we're just flowing through it. Maybe when you're playing music, yeah, but we're in flow. Athletes might refer to it as being in the zone, being at optimal performance. How do we create that? How do we get there? So in relation to tennis then, Galway, in a second edition, he wrote about this earlier on, says that tennis can be seen as a game of two parts. So you have the physical game, the actual game that you play on the court, the strokes with the ball, but it's also very much a mental game. And this can be applied to different sports, different areas, music, art, anywhere else. We tell ourselves that I'm not that good enough, my strokes aren't good enough, my opponent is better than me. That might be the case, but we have this, what Galway also talks about, the two selves. Okay, so we have this self one that is critical and judgmental, telling us, you can't do this, you're not very good, that critical self. And we have that in everything that we do. But then we also have that automatic self, the one that we want to let come forward, to let us be creative, whether it's on the tennis court, whether it's on music, whether it's in art. Okay, so how do we quieten? How do we stop that critical self? Okay, so we can use mindfulness to do that. But what I was interested in is also about our character, about who we are. We're all different. So as part of the master's course, I came across our character strengths. And so for me, I thought, well, if we take our character strengths, which I'll talk about in just a moment, and apply them, so those strengths that are unique to us, and apply them mindfully, then that can help us to perform better. Sorry, I've got a stonky cold, I hope my voice lasts. Okay, so first of all then, a bit of background about character strengths. If I was to ask you, if I was to say to you, do you know what your character strengths are? Not your talents, not your skills, okay? Your character, who you are, what's authentic, what's unique to you, what is something that comes naturally to you. Most of us will say, I don't know, okay, wouldn't have an idea. Some might have an awareness that something might be a strength, but not really sure how to talk about it or even identify it as being a strength. Okay, so Linley says that a strength is a pre-existing capacity for a particular way of behaving, of thinking, or feeling that is authentic and energizing to the user. It enables optimal functioning, development, and performance. So it allows us to be at our best, more engaged, more alive, more vigorous, and therefore more in flow. So certainly when I did this master's course, I did the VIA classification, which is a survey, asks a series of questions, which I've put on the left-hand side there. I looked at them. I did the questionnaire, I looked at them, and so, I'll share with you. And I've done this several times since then. This was done in the first year of the course, and I did it again in subsequent years. And the top ones, there might be a slight shift, because I guess that is in relation to what's happening in your life at the time. But they were always fell to the top. So my top ones were love of learning, love, curiosity, hope, kindness. So most people will go for the 5, but sometimes you can also go for the 6, the couple after that as well. Even though all 24 strengths, which have been identified under the 6 different virtues, matter. They just, sometimes we need to draw on those that are lower down at some point in our lives. Like right now, I'm really pulling out courage and bravery as I stand up here and talk to you. But what got me interested earlier in picking up the guitar, I would like to think that was love of learning and curiosity that suddenly made me eager to say, yeah, I want to give that a go. Okay, so honestly, I don't have a lot of time to go into too much detail here, but hopefully you have got the gist of it. So developing the characterization of character strengths was first developed by, or one of the first developments was by Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman. Basically, extensive research done on strengths and virtues across different cultures and across different historical periods to come to these 6 different virtues. So wisdom and knowledge, courage, humanity, justice, temperance and transcendence. So some of this will be familiar to you of what you've talked about in your own knowledge as well. So you see it's coming across different historical periods, across cultures. So there's 24 character strengths within each of those. So, taking character strengths, okay, what's authentic, what's unique to us? And then secondly, but we need to apply these mindfully, okay? So, speakers before me have talked about what mindfulness is, so I won't go into too much detail about this. I'll just mention it in relation to positive psychology. Okay, so yes, we know its origins were in Eastern and Buddhist traditions, but it came to the West. It was popularised by John Kabat-Zinn in the late 1970s with his program on mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So mindfulness is on the focusing of what is occurring in the present moment. What was key for me when I was looking at tennis performance is to be non-critical and non-judgmental. So there's a variety of different kind of programs out there. I've just picked a few, but there are many, such as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which focuses on anxiety, stress, and addiction. Okay, so overcoming these things. Relating to sport specifically, there's mindfulness sport performance enhancement, and then I found one relating to tennis, which is mindfulness-based tennis psychology. So these all focus on mindfulness in some shape or form, in some way, but yet none of these focus on both character strengths and mindfulness. So one work that I did find and which I used, so there's a picture of the book up there, I've got the book here as well. It's basically it's an intervention with different mindfulness meditations, different exercises to try out, and it's freely available for practitioners to use if they want to. So I simply took the work of Ryan Nemick and applied it to tennis. So for me, that the match was something that I thought would be worth exploring. It made sense in my head that, how we take something that's authentic to us and apply it mindfully. So Nemick says that the practice of mindfulness is strengths, and the practice of strengths is mindfulness. So basically, his program focuses on what is best in people, so their character strengths, but also the integration of both negative and positive thoughts and feelings. So simply by being mindful of these and applying them. So now, how did I translate that to tennis? Okay, so basically, I took the 8-week program and I condensed it into 4 weeks, over every 2 weeks. So I had 5 amateur tennis players, okay, so it's a small sample. And they took part in a series of 4 90-minute coaching sessions over 8 weeks, so once every fortnight. Each of the session comprised of 2 45-minute sections, which included various meditations and mindfulness exercises that were focusing on their strengths. So I was using the Nemick book, but the coaching on the tennis court I actually devised myself. And then prior to the start of the 8 weeks, each participant took the VIA strengths assessment so they could identify their top strengths. Wow, okay, that time goes quickly, doesn't it? Okay, so I think I'm getting there, yeah. And but also in addition to this, so in between the sessions, they were asked to do a series of mindfulness exercises at home in their daily life. And this wasn't just, so they did formal and informal meditation. So formal, I encouraged them to listen to maybe a Calm, one of the apps, Calm, that does, guided meditations, but also to being mindful in daily activities. Not sitting down for 15, 20 minutes or even shorter isn't for everybody. But we can apply mindfulness in our lives daily, whether it's driving, whether it's washing up, gardening, anything. Just focus on what you're doing at that moment. You're washing up, focus on the water, the bubbles, the plate, how you're washing it, and so on. So it's possible to do that. And participants were asked to do this. Now, on the tennis court itself, we started off with meditations such as body mindfulness, or character strengths, breathing space. So these were all taken from the program. And then I basically asked them then, so when I got them to focus on their character strengths or maybe the body mindfulness on the tennis court, I'd say, focus on how you're moving. How does your body feel? How does it feel when you hit the ball? Or, I know in tennis we're told to watch the ball, but do we really watch it? Really focus on it. Or when you're bouncing it, ready to serve, how many times do you bounce it? What colour is the ball? What colours do you see? Really, really focus on it. So, to sort of briefly summarise some of my findings, I carried out semi-structured interviews with each of the participants after the 8 weeks and analysed the data using thematic analysis. So 4 main themes were identified. So first of all, this awareness of being, people didn't know about their strengths. Even if they had an idea about their strengths, they weren't really sure to call it that. So, for example, one participant said, I know I'm creative, but I haven't really thought of it as a strength. I like to think that I've got a good sense of humour, but I've not really seen any of this as a strength before. Another participant said, well, I would say I had a limited knowledge, and I was quite impressed how the survey picked up on them. I could relate to the results. Having that strengths awareness or blindness, or what Nemic refers to, is not, having some idea but not really knowing that they're a strength. Then actually the mindfulness practice itself, they found that it was useful not just on the court but off the court as well. So for example, one participant said, well, I think that switch of being aware, so having that mindfulness awareness, that when you go into that negativity, that negative spiral, being able to change that. Or another participant said, well, I think if I'm feeling a bit stressed about something, it's an awareness, it's a tool, it's something that I can use, something that I can draw upon. In relation to tennis performance then, participants who actually said at the start that he found new meaning in his game. Before he was just turning up, he was just playing, but now as a result of the course, he felt that, my whole game is flowing better. I try not to show it, but I'm elated that the game is going my way. And I haven't got it here, but he said that, it's just, I've got this new tool, I can go out and I'm playing my opponent. My opponent isn't aware about mindfulness or strengths. And then another participant said, well, I was surprised to apply them in tennis games, and I'm starting to use them more in tennis matches and apply them. So, like fairness, for example, I tend to get frustrated with myself quite quickly, so I try and be a bit more gentler with myself. So using loving kindness. I can use humour sometimes as well. Or I've been using creativity again today in the match, to try and think, quickly, when things aren't going my way, how can I change that? And then just finally, I won't say too much about it, but basically they enjoyed the exercise, they enjoyed doing the guided meditations, and thought his voice was very calming. And it is, if you ever have a chance to listen. So, to conclude then, what I found, regardless whether this was on the court or off the court, tennis, it was just something that they could do on the court but off the court as well. So it was beneficial to all of them in some shape or form. Why? It created that awareness, just already that knowledge of that they learned about their strengths and about their mindfulness and how to use it. So they could use it on the court and off the court as well. And for me, the findings were quite profound. I just didn't anticipate that this was going to happen. And so I included a quote that the person actually said to me. She says, "Yeah, I'm going to try and use this more to help me stop smoking," and that just really, really touched me. But so mindfulness isn't for everybody, and I think you do need to distinguish between formal and informal practice. So for one participant in particular said, "Well, I find it hard to be alone with my thoughts, so I tend to avoid that." And there was probably some part of me that was trying to avoid it. So he didn't do any guided meditation, but instead he said that, well, whilst a more formal mindfulness meditation may not be suitable for him, he was actually able to practice mindfulness informally in daily activities, so driving, walking, gardening. So some references, and then finally, any questions? Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
That bit at the end really struck me. So I work in education, and as a lot of us are probably aware, there's what it seems that there's been a large rise in autism. Yeah. And so I work in performing arts, and a lot of the kids have autism. And I was talking with a couple the other week, and I was talking about mindfulness and meditation, and they said that as soon as I become silent, it's like this intense, overwhelming terror kind of starts to seep in. And so they don't want to do meditation, and they don't want to be mindful, because they're looking to have constant stimulation to kind of suppress the terror which emerges when quiet comes, which is quite unusual. You know, for most people that's not the case. Usually peace.
Yeah, I think using mindfulness, I think, needs to be done with some caution for some people. If they already have those negative thoughts, or, you know, perhaps, you know, sitting down, being alone with their thoughts isn't for them, but perhaps they could try different types of mindfulness.
So that was going to be my question, is have you had any thoughts or ideas about what to suggest for people that have that kind of response?
Just take a simple thing from daily life that they do and apply, just, you know, be in the present moment, try and be in the present moment, and just try and do it mindfully. And they'll probably say, well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, so like I said with the washing the dishes, you know, notice the flow of the water, the temperature of the water. Yeah, I mean, okay, washing dishes might not be for everybody.
No, that's my favourite time to be mindful.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I have a, you know, when I come to Northampton, I commute, and you use it partly for thinking time, alone time. It's great, you know. I've got kids, and it's like silent in the car. But then I also try to drive mindfully as well, and in other things I do. And people might think I'm crazy, but after I have a gym session, I lie down. I've got one of those rolling things. I don't know what they're called. And basically, I put my phone, my watch on for 2 minutes, and I basically meditate for 2 minutes. And I'm so chilled out after that, and it helps me stretch out and everything. And I get some weird looks, but I kind of like that. So it's so where I think where the strengths, the character strengths fits in, is taking what works for you. So you might have appreciation of beauty and excellence as one of the strengths. So maybe going for a walk mindfully. I did have my terms participants doing a mindfulness walk. Some of them related to it, some of them didn't. It was really crazy that those who had creativity, particularly the one guy who said that it felt like he changed his game. His creativity was his top strength, and he could instantly see how to use that. Now, for me, that's not right at the top there. Or another participant had perseverance, and for me, that's low down. I can understand until they actually were educating me. So I think, you know, it is a new discipline, and I think there's, you know, room for more work on this, and I certainly want to build on what I did before.
So hearing maybe with these kids, I could suggest finding their positive characteristics, finding the activities that they're already comfortable with, and finding a way to bring mindfulness into that.
Absolutely. Get them something that they do already, that they enjoy, and chances are it relates to their strengths. You don't have to tell them that, but just say, well, what do you do, and then try and apply and do it mindfully. Just a daily activity rather than a formal meditation.
Yeah, nice.
Perfect. Yeah. Susan.
Yeah, I'm curious about the differences between achieving a flow state and mindfulness mind, because I associate the mindful mind as one that's very involved with what they're doing, like a beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And a little bit of personal history. I spent 2.5 years learning how to drive, and I'm rubbish at it because I couldn't get into the flow. Everything I did so mindfully that every instructor believed that I was so mindful I was dangerous. So, what is your way between these two states?
You can't be mindful and in flow at the same time, but you can be mindful to create flow. So you can't, because there are different states. But yeah, I believe that you can use, so maybe bouncing the ball before you serve, and then once you're in play, you can't be mindful, you're trying to create that flow. So you can't be in the two states at the same time.
All right, we can have one more quick question. Anybody have any questions? If not, let's have a round of clap for